Hi there. Welcome to Poemalogues. My name is Dasha Kelly Hamilton. I'm going to be your host. I am your Poet Laureate for the city of Milwaukee and for the state of Wisconsin. And Poemalogues is an opportunity to gather some familiar faces and maybe some new voices to fall into an authentic conversation around wonder, justice, legacy, or joy. Now, I want to emphasize that Poemalogues is heavy on the log. We're heavy on the conversation dialogue. And the poem part, that's a way to get us there. We'll share some poems at the end, and we're also going to have our guests give us an idea about how they arrived at a poem about wonder. So I will let you know that the poem that I landed on is really about how we think and figuring things out. And I'll talk a little bit more about why I'm in that state of mind, why I'm in that wonderful state of wonderment. But first, I am excited to introduce you to someone who you have one of those folks where you know and you have that moment, but you see them every 5 years, but it's like you just saw them yesterday. That's his brother right here. I'm going to have you please give a screen welcome to Mr. Samuel Thompson, making his way to the screen stage. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
You know what? I'm gonna meet your fantastic and nod and smile. So this is definitely a time to wonder if you're fantastic. And I've been mindful about not giving easy automatic language. You know, I'm good, I'm great, I'm fine. I'm also fantastic, especially to be here with you today.
Yes, the feeling is definitely mutual.
Excellent, excellent. So we can see on screen why I'm excited and beaming. So I want to give the people a good chance to get to know why I'm smiling. Tell us your whole life story, Samuel. Who are you?
My whole life story. I am from Charleston, South Carolina. I currently live in Baltimore, Maryland. I am a violinist, an arts advocate, and an arts administrator. I've also done some writing, which has been really wonderful, and I love to cook and share meals with people. That last part, I'm really looking forward to getting back to when we are in the clear.
How long have you been? I'm going to go ahead and call you a chef. I don't know if you would assign that to yourself. Let's do it for today. Let's do it for today. Okay. So how long have you been in love with food and being able to prepare food? I think there's a bridge between the two. So how long have you been loving preparing food?
I've been loving preparing food for over 20 years. And it started, the love of preparing food started when I was a member of the New World Symphony on Miami Beach. We had these little apartments that were in an Art Deco hotel, and I think those apartments were called Pullmanettes at one time. But we had, basically a little studio apartment with a little kitchen. And on Sundays, there was a farmer's market on Lincoln Road. So we would all go either in the morning or after Sunday afternoon after concerts. People would go and we would buy candles or vegetables and things. So there was first the wonder of that, and then living on my own and really thinking about money. Because let's be real, Miami Beach. That's just like, oh, I could, where you could think, oh, I could just eat out all the time. So just the love of preparing food actually came from first the wonder of this new thing in front of me, even though I was very used to gardening because my parents did, like the wonder of having a farmer's market and being able to pick up a zucchini that was the size of my head. And that turning into, and the overwhelming necessity of needing to watch my coins turned into this love of time preparing.
So you had, I'm smiling. So I'm thinking of two things. One, my daughter is a junior in college now.
Oh, wow.
I know that happened.
Okay.
So one is thinking about how imaginative and functional your cooking was when you're first cooking for yourself. So she's this semester she's taking she's digitally taking classes but from home. And they'll go back on campus next semester. But she'll send me these pictures of actual baked chicken, of an actual vegetable.
Wow.
I remember that space of like, okay, Mama, how do I make, Grandma, how does this much, because you're tired of eating your survival food, right?
Right.
So to go from that space of being in beautiful Miami Beach and you're washing your coin and you're eating fresh food, I mean, that's a way to enter into cooking for yourself.
Yes.
Fast forward to now, you are cooking for other people. You're making fancy dishes. Is it a Zen place you get into? Is it a puzzle? What is it about?
It's all of it. It's a Zen place. It's a Zen place when I don't have to use a cookbook. Meaning there are things that I've cooked and I'm like, okay, I can make chicken Colombo because I remember the recipe.
He said chicken Colombo. That's what he said. He can make chicken Colombo.
Which is Guadalupean, yes. Yeah, and I mean there are all these these variants of it that use zucchini, squash, carrots, some use potatoes. That I can pretty much make without looking at a recipe. There are lots of things that I can make without recipes. That's when it gets really Zen, but it's also interesting to have to use a recipe or have a cookbook on a stand and that exacting art of measuring ingredients. And if making a complete meal either for myself or for when people were coming over, timing everything.
Little event planning, project management in the kitchen.
Project management in the kitchen, yes. Which, yeah, wow, I never thought of it that intently. But I remember coming home from school when I was a child. My mother would do this big Sunday cook. This big Sunday cook, and Mom was working, so we'd come home. Rule was the first person who comes home calls Mom at work. First person who gets home calls Mom at work. Okay, I'm home, and you'd get the instructions.
I'm laughing because my call was to my sister. Mama said she wants you to.
Okay. But I loved those calls and those times. It's like, okay, take the lima beans out and put them on at this time. Wash the rice and put that on at this time. The chicken's already made, so you can just put that in the oven at this time. So it's just, okay, this is easy. This is done. I do my homework. I practice. Everybody comes home. We have dinner.
Wow. And on this end of that story, I'm thinking, putting it into context, at the time that you were getting this rich experience, there was all this conversation about poor Samuel, the latchkey kid, right? And yes, there are different discussions about childcare and who should be home and who, but look at, that's just real. But I'm celebrating now that you know how long it takes to make lima beans and how to project manage your own kitchen, and you have this joy.
Oh, thank you. It's funny you mentioned latchkey kids because yes, I remember that term from the 80s, but we didn't think about it. I mean, because the first neighborhood we lived in, there is a woman named Miss Lawrence who everybody knew. And she had everybody's house keys because everybody's parents were working. So you go home from elementary school, get your key from Miss Lawrence, go home, same routine. The whole neighborhood was doing this. Like, okay, why is this a big deal? And then we moved into the neighborhood where my mother still lives. Miss Brenda still lives next door. She still knows everyone in the neighborhood. Oh my goodness, what an amazing woman. And she's just, it's so funny, but it's so refreshing. Like now knowing, I mean, and I'm grateful for it. Whenever I go home, or I should say, just because the future is uncertain, whenever I've been home, there's one thing that I know that's always been there. And it's Miss Brenda sitting on her front porch all day, saying hello to everybody's children, everybody's grandchildren, everybody in the neighborhood. She knows who does not. She knows if there's something going wrong. But then when we moved into that neighborhood, at first mom wasn't working, and then she started working months later. But I was in 5th grade going into 6th grade. My sister was in 6th grade going into 7th grade. She had after school things. I had some after school things. It was like, okay, here's the key. Come home. We could walk home from school. Okay, come home. And
Wow.
routine. So didn't even think about it. You know, I didn't, it wasn't in my consciousness that this was something to cause concern. Especially since I also saw that continuing in the neighborhood that my mother lives in now. We were all going home. We were all going home with our house keys and doing our homework.
And turning out okay. Well, that's not fair. Sometimes it didn't, but it wasn't about that key necessarily. And I think it's a bliss too of how we educate backwards, you know, looking back at, and we're going to make better forward. So like you said, at the time, this was just what happened. You went to school, you went to Miss Brenda, you got the key, you made dinner, you did homework, everyone came home. So the bliss of that ignorant bliss of being a young person and hopefully having all of those news stories and studies and judgments in a bubble away from you, because you're just getting up and going to the course of your day.
What are I'm concerned now because I'm wondering what people are saying about students now, especially elementary and middle school students. Because, and that's been heightened because of teaching and now being an administrator of a program that's operating virtually. When I observe a teacher, I'm going into their Zoom classroom, whatever, and I'm seeing all these kids. I'm also seeing their home. I'm seeing their home lives. And with that, it's a lot of conversations need to change about a lot of people.
Interesting. Say more.
I find myself thinking about language that's used, like the word underserved, and the images that come to mind when the word underserved is used to describe populations. Which leave out a host of other people in the United States who are equally underserved, or I'm trying to find a word. I'm remembering watching one of the strange but great things about this time of quarantine, shutdown, living and working and doing everything from home, is that I've been able to watch a lot of documentaries. And there's a Deutsche Welle documentary on poverty in the United States.
Okay.
And in that documentary, they're not examining working class people of color who primarily live in cities or urban areas. They took a really hard look at rural America and those populations who, well, it's a very sobering documentary to watch, because when you're in a city and you hear the words underserved, forgive me if I'm wrong, I hope that this doesn't offend anybody, but it seems that the word underserved is used to define urban, working class, African American, Latinx.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. It becomes yes. I have a similar reaction to youth at risk, or schools
Oh,
at risk, or neighborhoods at risk. Isn't every human being at risk of something? And it is coded language. You're absolutely right, for not just impoverished, but impoverished and of color. And okay, and absolutely, there are a particular set of dynamics to pay attention to when you're in a community without the resources it needs to thrive all the time.
right.
Um, but it's not a monolith. And and to point, an underserved, rural, even within a city, even families with means are underserved in a way when we're talking about young people. But that it became, like you said, this coded way for a demographic,
Right.
does translate to what the demographic necessarily unilaterally needs. And is it about providing needs, or is it about to feel good because you did something nice for this underserved? What are you serving? What are you serving?
Well, if I were a chef, I would open a restaurant like John Bon Jovi and like give people free meals, but I'm not. Well,
Fair.
and thinking about like this documentary that I saw, one of the things that, just what are you serving? One of the things that I saw that happening in one of these rural communities is that there is apparently a nonprofit that visited rural communities that don't have access to quality healthcare because the hospital may be too far away or the dentist is too far away. And we're talking people that need a lot of work. And there are nonprofits that go in and they do it for free.
There's a math happening behind some Oz curtain, right? So we know in our space, we have these conversations about abundance.
Right.
And you can, and not in a foolish way, but genuinely moving through the world, knowing that there truly is enough for everyone.
Right.
To have the basic level, our basic needs met. And still that's not happening. So we know that it's possible somewhere in us, and then we're still navigating in a system that functions as if it's not possible.
Right.
So it makes it, yes, it makes a tension of spirit.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's fascinating that you've just brought up abundance, especially in these times where there have been food shortages, where life in the city, where there have been food shortages, where we saw in March, April, May, farmers killing livestock and mowing over produce because supply chains had been so disrupted. But at the same time, there's so many people now that are so aware of all of the services that are available, where you may have to stand in line or drive, but you can get enough free produce to last a family of 4 for a while.
And that could be a list that's sent to everyone, not just the assumed underserved communities.
And now it is being sent to everyone.
Oh, yes.
Out of necessity.
Out of necessity. All of this paradigm shifting is going to get us someplace. It's going to get us some wonderful places.
I hope.
Let me ask you this, sir. How did you enter our conversation about wonder?
Oh, boy.
What was the first thing that came to your mind?
Driving into Breckenridge, Colorado.
Okay.
First time being in the mountains, and not the Smoky Mountains or the Appalachians, but actually being in the mountains where 13,000 feet, Breckenridge, I think, is at like 8,000 feet above sea level, and you're surrounded by these mountains that are up to 13,000 feet tall. A kid who grew up in the city, going to a music festival and just riding in, knowing on the ride to the airport that you see the horizon, you see them in the horizon, but driving into them, driving through them, driving on those mountain roads, and just looking at all of this nature, all of this natural phenomenon that's been there for how many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years, and just feeling an incredible sense of personal insignificance. You know, I think I read somewhere that somebody refers to that feeling as that is a feeling that can be equated with spirituality. When you're looking at something or going to the ocean, not specifically the beach, and definitely not a crowded beach, but going to the ocean and just looking out at the vastness of that, knowing that miles away on the other side, there are other places, there are other lands where there are other people, and somebody could be having the same experience at the same time. That feeling of, yeah, that's how I came into the conversation about wonder, and I guess with wonder, mystery.
I especially love the notion that there's a mirror experience happening on the other side of this enormous body of water, or on the other side of the planet, or the other side of this tree, the other side of this building, but being curious about you being, not so much about you being duplicated, but just who else and how else is having this moment of literally being awestruck. And I love that comparison of being by the ocean, because you were talking recently about how small you're reminded that you are, but in a beautiful way.
Right.
And for you to be a city kid to go and see these, just that carved into the side, this is nature, nobody made this, had to make you feel small and enormous at the same time. Which is what wonder is, small and enormous at the same time.
Right. I never got to the top of a mountain that summer. We got pretty close. I remember we got to the snow line. It's like, no.
Yeah, high five. Better than me, brother. Better than me.
Oh,
I'd love to hear the poem that search led you to. But before we hear the poem, is there anything that you're excited about, or any good word you want to share with the good people? You've shared so much today.
Oh, goodness. I'm excited about I'm really excited about our recent administrative transition.
Okay.
There's a personal project that I'm incredibly excited about, because I think I finally get to start working on it, because a part of this involves travel.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, oh, the library's open now. The campus is open to visitors now. Okay, I can now go
and do my thing.
Do my research. Yes. I can finally get that started. I'm tremendously excited about that. I'm excited to see what our Bridges program students are going to do at the end of the year. Going back to cooking, I have to say, and I'm laughing a little bit, I'm excited about making gumbo in the slow cooker this week. First time.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're going, well, I guess this would be the season to do it. Go big.
Yeah. Like,
Go big.
first time, it's like, and it's just been, it's been on my mind for the past couple of weeks. It's like, it's not spring yet. It's still winter. I have things frozen in the refrigerator. That's great. In the freezer, but I want to do this. I've never done this. And I've watched people make their ruse and spend all day putting everything in the pot. So
well, you definitely have time. You definitely have time.
Yes.
In a quality, exquisite roux. And I
Yes.
appreciate you making this time to chat with me today, especially about wonder of all things. I'm glad we would have cover that topic with you.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad that you asked. This has been a pleasure. Oh boy. Who reads first, you or me?
You.
Oh,
we're ready for you.
Okay. I found this poem by Bliss Carman called The Heart of Night. When all of the stars are sown across that night blue space, with the immense unknown in silence, face to face, we stand in speechless awe while beauty marches by and wonder at the law which wears such majesty. How small a thing is man and all that world sown vast, that he should hope or plan or dream his dream could last. O doubter of the light, confused by fear and wrong, lean on the heart of night and let love make thee strong. The good that is the true is clothed, with beauty still. Lo, in their tent of blue, the stars above the hill.
I have that whole picture in my mind. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So we have been talking about wonder, and we've covered food and music and that lady next door who's got the whole block held in her hands, and the idea of being big and small at the very same time. So when I landed on the idea of wonder, I was thinking about thinking. And I'm in this space. I had a chance to do an in-service with educators, and we were having this conversation of how to encourage and ignite imagination and creative thinking with young people, and moving away from creativity being about art. It's a whole nother conversation for another day, but just encouraging thought and ideas and considering what else is possible. And that also comes to figuring your way out of anything. So the poem that I searched for was Figuring It Out Poems, and landed on a poem by Edgar Guest called Equipment. Okay. Figure it out for yourself, my lad. You've all the greatest of men have had. 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and a brain to use if you would be wise. With this equipment, they all began to start for the top and say, I can. Look them over, wise and great. They take food from a common plate, and similar knives and forks they use. With similar laces, they tie their shoes. The world considers them brave and smart, but you've all they had when they made their start. You can triumph and come to skill. You can be great if only you will. You are well equipped for the fight you choose. You have legs and arms and a brain to use. And the man who has risen, great deeds to do, began his life with no more than you. You are the handicap you must face. You are the one who must choose your place. You must say where you want to go, how much you will study the truth to know. God has equipped you for life, but he lets you decide what you want to be. Courage must come from the soul within. The man must furnish the will to win. So figure it out for yourself, my lad. You were born with all that the great have had. With your equipment, they all began. Get hold of yourself and say, I can. Wonder what you can do next. Thank you for being here, for spending this time with us. We'll see you again next Monday for another Poemalogue.